The world was once a single continent. At the end of the first world, it was split apart, and a great red line wrapped around the globe. They would never meet again. At the end of the second world, the sea flooded over the lands, separating the world even further into small islands. They would never meet again. And at the end of the third world, the great flood will end, the great red line will be destroyed, the shattered fragments of the lost world will be reunited, they will meet again, all in one piece. The entire history of the One Piece world just became clear. The origin of devil fruits, the mother flames, the ancient limitless energy that Vegapunk spoke of, the truth of Nika, the Lunarians and the Moon People, the sun that is needed to bring the dawn, and why the world has been reset twice. Most importantly, the revelations of the true history of the One Piece world cement once and for all that this is a story about dreams. And what we have been pursuing since the beginning has been the dawn of an ideal world. So to begin solving everything, and I mean absolutely everything, let's first go through all that is clearly obvious in the mural, because while it's very vast and complex, about 90% of it is actually very clear. What's depicted on the left side is clearly a large alliance fighting together, composed of Nika, Emeth, samurai from Wano, what appear to be Minks, what appear to be Lunarians based on their iconic flame and wings, what appear to be Tontatas based on their tiny size and bushy tails, what appear to be Giants of Elbaf based on their size, their Viking helmet and shield, and most importantly, what appears to be the Mermaid Princess of Prophecy, aka Poseidon. We can even see giant whales, likely island whales of Laboon species in the alliance, as they are also an intelligent race. And most interestingly, in this alliance there is a giant that is far, far larger than any others, seemingly an ancient giant, and most notably based on his hair and the two bands that we see, and even his pants, it seems to be very deliberately mirroring the imagery of Ors. Could this have been Ors himself, or perhaps Ors' even greater ancestor who is implied to have been from the second world, a being who is now recognized as Onigashima? The bottom line is, what we clearly have depicted here is a giant alliance of all people, nations, and races, connecting the vast world of One Piece together, united in a single war against a great enemy, seemingly over this great flame. This could be depicting the upcoming final war, or displaying what happened in the Void Century War at the end of the second world. We will circle back to this shortly. First, let's take a look at the right side of the mural. Here we see additional clearly identifiable pieces of lore. This ship is very clearly the Ark Noah, the ship of promise. It is identical visually, and we can literally see animals and humans filing into Noah in pairs, an obvious allusion to the biblical tale of Noah, where he took on pairs of every living creature into his ark. Even though Noah in One Piece seems to be built vast enough to take on everyone, and not just pairs of each living species, Oda is drawing a small parallel to the real-world story of Noah here, just to convey to the reader that we are supposed to understand that this is the Ark Noah in the mural. And above this we can see another familiar sight, a ship in the sky that seems remarkably reminiscent of the Ark Maxim shooting down lightning. This is of course not actually Maxim, it is very likely meant to represent the ancient weapon Uranus. As we haven't yet clearly seen Uranus in the story, Oda is simply using imagery that we the reader would recognize here for the purposes of the mural, of Maxim shooting down lightning, as Maxim was the symbolic precursor in the story to Uranus, a great weapon of God up in the sky that shoots down energy to erase islands below and bring the apocalypse. Maxim was to the Skypiea arc what Uranus is meant to be for the story as a whole. So up above we have Uranus raining down destruction, down below we have the Ark Noah saving the various species of the world. We can even make out an elephant form here that would seemingly be Zunisha. And finally, we have one new piece of information to slot into the mural, which is that this appears to be a great serpent of hell. I talked about this serpent a while ago, but this confirms it as part of the mythos of the world. So now that we have all of this labeled for certain, we can begin looking at the really interesting stuff over here. And this is where we begin to see the answer to everything. The question on everyone's minds is, what is this giant sun, and what is this strange energy that we've seen strewn all over the mural? We were already told much of the answer in our previous arc, Egghead Island. See, Vegapunk dreamed of a utopia, a world where there is an infinite, endless energy source. With infinite energy, it is possible to create infinite resources, as we see from Vegapunk's lab. And most importantly, as I explain in far greater detail in this video, the entire story of One Piece has been about conflict over resources. Whether those resources be gold, land, food, resources are over and over again the repeating fundamental problem that Oda weaves into the story, largely because a major overarching theme of the story is the problem of the haves and the have-nots, with the suggested ideal world being repeatedly implied to be one of infinite resources. And what's most important is that it's heavily implied that in the era of the Second World, the Ancient Kingdom in fact had this type of energy. In Egghead, we learned that Vegapunk has essentially been trying to recreate what they had in the previous era, the Second World. This mysterious energy that could power a giant like Emeth, as Emeth is clearly a product of Joy Boy's era, the Second World. We know that Vegapunk's ultimate creation was the Mother Flame, which is the only thing powerful enough to fuel the ancient weapons just as the Ancient Kingdom could. The Mother Flame is even depicted as having been the fuel that powered the ancient weapons in the Moon People's hieroglyphics. And note that what we see here in this hieroglyphic also took place during the Second World. The Moon People came down to Earth during the Second World, the same era that the Ancient Kingdom wielded their ancient energy source. Most notably, the Ancient Kingdom is known as having been an extraordinarily, almost impossibly prosperous and advanced kingdom beyond anything that is possible in the modern day, and that would make a lot of sense considering they seemingly had the answer to the unlimited energy problem. Essentially, we have been told that energy is at the heart of it all. Note that the Mother Flame by itself right now is not the complete answer. Vegapunk makes it clear that the Mother Flame is incomplete and that there is an ancient energy that powered Emeth that Vegapunk still does not understand. And Vegapunk makes it clear that this energy is in some way all around us, but he never figured out how to convert it. The Ancient Kingdom was likely able to use this energy to create Mother Flames that powered their ancient weapons, while Vegapunk had to figure out how to recreate a Mother Flame through his own methods, as it is clearly established he could not tap into the energy source that the Ancient Kingdom had. And this would likely explain why his Mother Flame is incomplete. This will be discussed later in the video. But with this in mind, here is where we circle back to what we were seeing on the right side. What is depicted on the right side of the mural is an advanced civilization. Industrialization that is in fact far, far more advanced than anything in the One Piece world that we see today, aside from Egghead, which is of course the island of the future. These towering structures are far more reminiscent of a modern day city than anything that we've seen in One Piece's kingdoms and nations, and what's most important is these little energy orbs being carried here. These energy orbs are strewn all throughout the mural in every corner. These energy orbs are the key to what was being fought over in the past. What we see in this hyper-advanced civilization is a cycle, an energy source that is repeatedly fed into the machines of this civilization that continues to cycle around, implying a limitless cycle of energy. This limitless energy source is the key to creating the utopia that Vegapunk talked about. This is what it is implied the Ancient Kingdom ran on. This is how they had a civilization far more advanced than what we can do in the modern One Piece world. What is being depicted here is the hyper-advanced Ancient Kingdom that we were told about that had an infinite energy supply. I know some people may argue that the right side of the mural is supposed to depict the first world because they see the big serpent, but remember, we also see Noah here, which was created at the end of the second world, and we see Uranus firing shots to flood the world, which was specifically what happened at the end of the second world, which makes it extremely likely that this hyper-advanced civilization, fueled by a continuous cycle of energy, literally exactly as Vegapunk described the Ancient Kingdom to be, is in fact the Ancient Kingdom. So that is almost all of the mural completely solved. And I know at this point you all are wanting to talk about this giant sun. How does the energy source that we see here tie back to this giant sun that this devil figure on the left is holding, and what is this giant snake on this end? But to solve these pieces, we need to first solve the mystery of the three worlds. But first, it's the month of love, and we have the most romantic islands in One Piece available for you this February. This month, you can visit the Island of Women, or maybe Kamabaka Kingdom is more your speed, or the Nation of Romance Dressrosa, or the Island of Gorgeous Sakura Petals Drum Kingdom. Each poster is printed on matte paper, hand-cut by the artist himself, and you can get all four together for 50% off each poster. You can also still get the premium package if you want to appear on my streams, and in that case, you can also choose any poster from 2024 as well. So if you want Dressrosa, Amazon Lily, Drum Kingdom, and Kamabaka Kingdom for your walls, just hit the link in the description below. All posters from 2024 will also be available in the complete original set bundle. Disclaimer, for the most literal translation possible, we will not be using Viz, as while the Viz translation is overall accurate, it did take some minor liberties to make the language flow in a more readable manner for publication. I'm using a near identical translation to Viz that cuts out any additional flair to be as literal and exact a translation of the Japanese as possible. This translation is cross-referenced with multiple other sources, and explanations are included here breaking down the exact kanji in case you want to check it out for yourself or confirm with Japanese speakers. So in solving the history of the three worlds, the place that we actually want to begin with is the second world. This is the one that we can most definitively fill out line by line. And from there, the pieces fall into place for the third and first world. In the second world, we know that the Moon People came down to Earth and the Ancient Kingdom flourished. The Moon People ran out of resources on the Moon, so they had to come down to the Blue Planet. Right there we have a desire, a dream. The people of the Moon dreamed. Similarly, the people of the half-moon had a dream, and as many have pointed out, the half-moon likely refers to the D tribe, as that is the symbol of the half-moon, and the D tribe is of course the primary group that are most central to the history of the Second World, and the Void Century that we've been trying to figure out for so long. It is their will passed down from the previous world to our world that we are trying to learn about. We also know that the D tribe are in some way tied to the Ancient Kingdom, so that's two groups who both had a dream in this era. Could it be that the Moon People and the D tribe stories are intertwined? It's especially interesting considering that we know that the Ancient Kingdom also acquired ancient weapons during this era, and based on the hieroglyphics, at least the ancient weapon Uranus may have been brought down to Earth with the Moon People. But what about the sun that sowed the seeds of war that man destroyed, and what about man becoming God? Well, we know that man becoming God refers to the 20 human kings taking over the world and declaring themselves gods. That is what happened at the end of the Second World, and that's why the celestial dragons are the gods of the Third World that we have today. So most importantly, what then was the sun that they destroyed, and how did the sun sow the seeds of war? Well, across all three passages, there is consistent message of the sun, and the sun is referred to as something different from the sun god, as we know the sun god to be Nika. So the sun is some other crucial component to all this, and when the sun returns at the end of the Third World, it seems as though everything will finally be able to have a happy ending of sorts. The sun also seems to be this defining piece that is being fought over in the mural. Now we know that in the First World, the desire for the sun was something forbidden. In the Second World, the sun was the cause of war, and in the Third World, the sun will lead to peace. We can solve what the sun is by putting together what we know happened in the Second World and what we know will lead to happiness in the Third World. Again, it was all already spelled out for us in Egghead, the beginning of the final saga. The answer to Utopia, the answer to the fundamental problem throughout all of One Piece, the resource problem, is unlimited energy. Again, go watch this video, but it's explained over and over throughout the story that happiness and true world peace and unity come when everyone has enough. Even Luffy recognizes this, and Vegapunk makes it clear that everyone can only have enough if we have some sort of unlimited resource. And by the end of Egghead, it is painfully clear that the Void Century War was over this sort of resource. The Ancient Kingdom had in its possession some sort of ancient energy that allowed it to prosper, but also gave it great power, as this energy source could create mother flames to power the ancient weapons. Imu led the 20 kingdoms against the Ancient Kingdom because Imu very obviously coveted this power. We know this because it's literally what is happening today. Imu's primary goal is to wield the ancient weapons himself to cement himself as the final god of the world and bury the rest of it under the sea. For the very same reason that it was drilled into us so long back that great power can be used for both good or evil depending on the wielder, so too was that what the Void Century War came down to. Imu desiring the power that the Ancient Kingdom had, wanting to seize their limitless energy and their ancient weapons for himself so that he could turn it on the world and use it to rule. So by the end of Egghead, three things are clear. The power of the ancient energy source is likely what Imu and the kings coveted back during the Void Century War. That ancient energy source no longer exists today, as Imu couldn't use the ancient weapons for centuries throughout the Third World, and now is relying on Vegapunk to figure out how to recreate Mother Flames from scratch. And finally, it's established that only when we have the ancient, limitless energy source again that a new utopic world can be created. This all perfectly fits with the three uses of the term sun that we see in the Second and Third World. The sun sowed the seeds of war, meaning the other kingdoms coveted what the Ancient Kingdom had, this special energy source that allowed them to grow far more advanced and powerful than all the others, and this eventually drove the other kingdoms to turn against the Ancient Kingdom in a great war. Man killed the sun. The Ancient Kingdom was destroyed at the end of the Second World, and along with it, its great energy source was lost forever. Imu and the Celestial Dragons today no longer have this energy source, so even though they became gods, they lost the very thing that they fought over. The sun returns and the dawn will come. It's explained that we will have a utopia when we are able to truly revive the infinite energy source again and use it for the betterment of everyone. That is what is coming at the end of the final war. The sun, continuously referred to in this text, is the ancient energy source. And so finally, let's go back to the First World. What we know of the First World is that in this era, the sun, the ancient energy source, existed, but it was forbidden. Ultimately, a man broke the rules and touched it regardless. Interestingly, the man was a slave, and if all of mankind in general was forbidden from touching the sun, that would indicate that in the First World, man was beneath some other group of beings in general. And so here, I personally speculate that it was the Lunarians who were above mankind. This is because the Lunarians were considered the gods of the world before the Celestial Dragons. It's hard to say how far back they were gods, but if all of mankind were once subservient to another race, then the Lunarians make the most sense, especially considering that the mother flames that could be produced with the infinite energy source also seems to be what powers the Lunarians in a sense, as they have the very same flames on their backs. So for them to have originally possessed the sun seems fitting. This would also follow as Oda loves the idea of cycles, where oppressors and the oppressed swap places. This is yet again another absolutely defining theme in One Piece. It takes place in arc after arc, where those who were once subservient are able to seize power and then reverse the roles. And so for the Lunarians to have once been gods who ruled over man, only for man to ultimately overthrow them and subjugate them would be quite fitting, especially if it all began with man getting their hands on the sun that the Lunarians once had. Now, upon getting this energy source, man was able to make a wish, and with that, the first arrival of the sun god happened, and the world changed. So here we need to take a huge pause and address two major things before moving any further. How exactly did the world change, and are the various gods that are referenced throughout these texts literal? So here is where we need to understand something about this religious text. A lot of readers are going to immediately jump on the various uses of the term God throughout these texts and say that the earth god and the serpent destroyed the world. But the text here is generally not literal. What has to be remembered is that these are not actual historical texts. This is the giants' religion. They are ascribing gods as the causes of a lot of changes in the world, but that doesn't mean that in actuality gods literally appeared, or that in actuality any of these gods even exist. Remember, this is an idea that's reiterated multiple times in One Piece, that significant events are often ascribed to being caused by gods by the people of ancient civilizations, but ultimately that's just their beliefs. It's made clear that it's important not to treat religion as fact. Oda literally spells out for us as explicitly as possible that whether or not even Nika himself actually exists is irrelevant. All that matters is that with enough belief, the idea of Nika can be made to manifest through the power of devil fruits, through the power of dreams, which is interestingly remarkably similar to the phenomenon that seems to have occurred when the man touched the sun, though we will get to that shortly. But the biggest signifier that we should not necessarily take the claims of the earth god and the serpent and the forest god literally is because, again, we can look to what we know of what actually happened in the second world. The world did not drown because of the sea god's rage. It is established fact that what actually happened is mankind did it to themselves. An ancient weapon was fired over and over hundreds of times in a bloody, violent war, till the sea flooded over and consumed most of the land. It's just that in this text, which is a religious retelling of this great war from centuries ago, these events of the Great Flood become ascribed to a sea god punishing the world and man for its sins. The text is symbolic, not literal. As such, if we look back at the first world, the earth god becoming enraged and punishing man along with the great serpent is likely putting a religious spin on the actual real-world events that happened. Namely, the earth was reshaped for the first time. How exactly? Well, the second world began with the planet split up into continents and ended with most of the planet flooded underwater, leaving only islands. The first world implies a similar cataclysmic ending, only this time it wouldn't have been the sea. It would have been something related to the land, because in the second world the sea god was referenced, whereas in the first world the earth god was referenced. And the simple answer is Pangaea. Oda dropped the hint of Pangaea plain as day in the story before. Pangaea Castle is at the center of the entire world. The One Piece world was very likely originally one giant continent. At the climax of the first world, the first cataclysm occurred and two big changes took place. The original continent was forcibly broken into pieces that separated, and the red line came to be formed around the globe. Hence, in the giant's religious version of the tale, the earth god shattered the land in his anger, and the great evil snake coiled around the globe. It's not literal, it's allegorical. Dory and Brogy refer to a great red snake in Little Garden. No such snake actually exists, it's just the red line. So much like the flooding was referred to as the sea god's rage, so too was the earth splitting and the creation of the red line referred to as the earth god's rage and the snake's doing. Even though in reality there was likely an actual conflict that took place at the end of the first world that reshaped the planet, just as was the case at the end of the second world. Note that the Lunarians likely shifted to living atop the red line at the start of the second world, but mankind was no longer subservient to them after claiming the sun based on how mankind flourished in the second world. And here's the biggest reason that it's likely that the world was originally one continent and then went from a whole continent to a shattered and divided continent and finally to a flooded overworld with only islands remaining. It's because of the final line of each text. The first two worlds clearly end tragically with a great worldwide calamity and the line, "Never shall they meet again." In both instances, something is being lost or separated on a vast scale that supposedly cannot be fixed. If in the second world we know that it's the sea flooding over the world and it's signified in the text by the reference to the rage of the sea god, then we know that in the first world whatever happened has to do with the earth as it references the earth god. Add in the reference to the great snake, which is a metaphor for the red line, and it's clearly about the reshaping of the land in some way. At the end of the first world, the continent of Pangaea that once existed separated and the red line was formed with the pieces of the land never to meet again. Then in the second world, the continents were flooded over and land was lost permanently, never to meet again. But at the end of the third world, what will happen? Everything will meet again, in one piece. And so sitting there in completely plain sight, we have our story. This is the epic of One Piece. This is the tale of a world that has been broken not once, but twice. And only the third time can it all be fixed and made whole again. But this time it will be different, because we know that the first world was flawed. Man was a slave until Nika came. So then how did Nika arrive if I'm saying that so much of the tales of these gods is allegorical? Well, now we can finally answer the secret of the sun. The key in what caused Nika to arrive is that something changed when the sun was touched. Man wished for Nika after touching the sun, and only then did Nika come. That is in fact exactly the same way that the Nika fruit exists. People wish for Nika, and so he exists through the power of people's dreams manifested in a devil fruit. So is the power of the sun tied to the power of devil fruits in some way? Well, I believe that the sun unlocks the power of people's dreams. And this is the answer to the mysterious ancient energy source. So full credit, I first heard this from an extremely interesting theory that was put out by the Hidden Island some time back, that the mysterious ancient energy from the past that Vegapunk was trying to discover was in fact the energy from people's dreams. Now if this is true, then literally everything falls into place. Remember, to begin with, the limitless power of dreams is maybe the single defining theme of One Piece. Vegapunk himself also said that this mysterious energy is something that is in fact all around us. On top of this, we've already been told that devil fruits are born through the power of people's dreams, the energy of the collective unconscious, meaning that dreams do have literal power. So could it be that the mysterious sun that the man touched is what allowed the power of people's dreams to begin to manifest as energy that flowed through the world? The same energy that we see all throughout the mural. Because this would explain two things: the origin of devil fruits and the ancient energy source that Vegapunk was talking about. To begin with, it would explain why touching the sun and making a wish allowed for the first coming of Nika. After this moment, touching the sun, dreams could now begin to gain real tangible power. And of course, what a slave would most strongly have desired is for a god of liberation to come save him. This likely created the first devil fruit and the first Nika user. The simple evidence that this sun god from the first world wasn't literally the god Nika, but rather a Nika born through the power of dreams, is that, well, Nika didn't show up to save the slaves until the man touched the mysterious sun. If the Nika that is spoken of in the first world was literally the god Nika, hell, if a literal god Nika even exists, then Nika would have answered their prayers a long time ago. But remember, Oda's made it clear that we the reader are not supposed to worry about whether there is a real god Nika. Skypiea also spelled out that we are not supposed to go down the rabbit hole of figuring out which gods are real or not and how much stock we should put in them. The whole message is that the real magic of the One Piece world comes from man, the power of us, the power of our dreams. What allowed the concept of Nika to come to life was man touching the sun. Why? Because the sun likely brings dream energy into reality. Nika was born into the world through hope because all things are born into this world through hope. So with the power of the sun, the dream energy of people likely began to become actual literal energy. And the most clear illustration of this is what is happening on the right side of the mural. This absolutely bizarre cycle is completely explained if you consider that what it's depicting is that dreams literally are the ancient energy source. The energy that is all around us that brings devil fruits to life, and the energy that can also be converted to mother flames to power civilization. Dreams became an energy source ever since man touched the sun. Because this cycle shows that all humans all carry some piece of this mysterious energy that they are then able to feed into machines to endlessly supply them. The humans themselves clearly innately have the energy that powers industry. What we see at the bottom is humans at the end of their lives dying and passing on, as evidenced by their halos as they travel down. And then we see new humans born into this world coming up on the other side with their own dreams. But the single most telling part of this cycle that implies that dreams are the energy source that humans carry is that we can see that some humans who still seem to retain some of their mysterious energy at the end of their lives are actually able to pass on that mysterious energy to the next batch of humans before dying. Which makes perfect sense when you realize they are passing on their dreams, because that is what is perfectly in line with the other major defining theme of the series, passing down of one's will. I mean, Oda told us so far back that we need to understand that the never-ending power of dreams is the true never-ending flame. Essentially, with Egghead, Oda began to spell out for us that the defining themes of the story are in fact becoming literal. Dreams aren't just theoretically infinite, the power of man's dreams can in fact be unlocked to become an infinite energy source that makes for a better world for all. Vegapunk had to create a mother flame manually, but there was a time that there was an energy source all around us that could be converted into that power. It's that very same energy that powers Emeth that Vegapunk couldn't figure out. And the reason we can no longer tap into this dream energy is because, as spelled out in the Second World text, we lost the sun in the Great War. The same sun that allowed us to begin using dream energy in the First World was lost in the Second World and needs to be recovered for us to bring the dawn in the Third World. And if you still think it's crazy that the power of dreams can be used as an energy source, why? The simple fact that dream energy was already confirmed to be the power that creates devil fruits should be evidence enough, but the most clear parallel to dream energy being real is what Oda has already done with the other defining theme of the story: man's will. We were repeatedly told throughout the story about the importance of the strength of one's will, of the strength of one's ambition, of the strength of one's conviction. And then finally we learned that man's will can literally be manifested into actual, real power. That is what Haki is. Haki is very literally man's will manifested into literal power. It's an energy that man innately wields, born from their will, that can be so powerful it can split the heavens themselves. So the revelation that dreams carry their own energy as well simply naturally completes the two halves of Oda's thematic messaging: man's will and man's dreams. These are the powers that we as humans possess. If man's will has energy that man can wield, and we already know that man's dreams factually do have energy that creates devil fruits, then naturally wouldn't this dream energy also be what Vegapunk refers to as floating all around us? This energy that is floating all around the mural. This energy that perfectly explains what humans are carrying and passing on in this cycle. This energy that in the past could be converted into mother flames to fuel civilization and even weapons as an infinite energy source. Tell me, what better answer is there thematically to this mysterious energy source that Vegapunk is talking about, that is all around us, that also explains this cycle? I mean, the chapter that we were told about it is itself literally called A Genius's Dream. The line Ripley literally says before the mural is unveiled is that this may all be a dream. Dreams are the answer. And now finally we return back to the key to it all, the sun, as when man touched the sun, the power of dreams was finally unleashed into the world, starting with Nika, the first wish that bore the first devil fruit, creating the first Nika user. And now here's where things really fall into place. After the man touched the sun and Nika came, some sort of conflict erupted. One so powerful that the world fractured and the red line was formed. If I had to make a guess, it would be because from this point on, now that dream energy flooded the world, devil fruits began to manifest. And the very first devil fruits, alongside the first Nika fruit, would have been the most powerful ones, with the mightiest abilities people could think of. Like, say, the power to break the world itself into pieces. We're all very familiar with that one, correct? And the idea that devil fruits really began to spawn after the sun was touched follows if we look at the start of the second world. Now we can finally fill in the first lines here. The forest god began sending devils out into the world. If the first world completely changed after the man touched the sun, then at the beginning of this second world is where the vast majority of devil fruits would likely have begun to proliferate. It is very likely that devil fruit users are what are being referred to here as the devils, because it uses similar kanji, and as devil fruit users are such a huge defining aspect of the One Piece world, it would make sense that the sudden spread of devil fruit users would be a major point of note in the history of the world. And the big giveaway is that this spread of devils is attributed to the forest god. Why? Because they are devil fruits. Fruits are naturally associated with trees. If all these powerful people with devil powers are emerging thanks to eating forbidden fruits, then naturally, in the giants' retelling of these events, they would assume that the origin of such power must be from some forest god. Hell, many readers have even speculated that all devil fruits originally even grew from a single tree, the Eve tree, before they began being scattered across the world, which would further explain why the giants would refer to the forest god as the originator of these devil powers. In the mural, we even see a god depicted upon the great tree. And interestingly, the idea that the sun was the conduit for dream energy to flood the world is even further reinforced when you consider that there are no new devil fruits being born in the modern era, the third world. In this third world, we have encyclopedias laying out all the devil fruits that exist, yet shouldn't new devil fruits be continuing to pop up if they're the product of people's dreams? The simple answer is that the sun is needed for people's dreams to manifest as energy throughout the world. Just as we lost the ability to access the dream energy around us for technology when the sun disappeared, so too did new devil fruits stop being manifested manifested through dreams when the sun disappeared, because the sun is the conduit for dream energy. Now let's take a step back, because you might be saying, Morge, you're being a killjoy by saying that these gods don't actually exist, and that all of the magic of the world comes back to this sun. Well, I'm just reiterating what we've been told over and over, which is that we are not supposed to put that much stock in gods, and that there's no point in debating if they exist or not. What we know is that the real message of One Piece is that anything can be made reality if people believe enough. So guess what? These powerful gods do exist in a sense, in that their fruits likely exist today. The Nika fruit exists because so many people believe in the sun god, and guess what? There is strong evidence that there is also a world serpent fruit that exists. Since that was the myth surrounding the first world, a world serpent fruit could have been born in the second world. I'm not going to go into great detail here, but in this video, I explained why it's likely that Imu may in fact have the world serpent fruit, especially considering that the world serpent is the great enemy that must be felled in the final war, Ragnarok in Norse mythology. And in the Skypiea arc, Oda made it clear that the evil false god of the land was represented by a great serpent that needed to be slain. Interestingly, Skypiea also foreshadowed the idea of the earth shattering as punishment by the god of the land along with the Great Snake. As Noland and Kolgara's story reached its climax after the island split from an earthquake, leaving Noland at the mercy of the supposed snake god. And most importantly, now it's been revealed that this is a serpent of Hellflame, and that seems to match exactly with Imu's powers in that he is able to create Hellflame of some sort to teleport his subordinates and grant them power and so on. I believe that Imu ate this fruit and gained great power during the Second World. And now we enter the Third World, and much of it seems straightforward. The sun god will arrive and dance, Luffy will save the day, but what's most important is that the sun will return that has been lost since the Second World. And most importantly, the world itself should be fixed. They will meet again, meaning the reversal of the Flood, the destruction of the Red Line, and the reformation of Pangaea. How all this will happen is absolutely impossible to determine right now, but it likely goes back to the original source, the sun and its mysterious powers that turn dreams into energy. But most importantly, what is the story that is unfolding across these three worlds? Remember, all of this lore isn't just random shit that Oda is making up. One Piece is a story. The events and history that Oda is establishing all serve the themes and messaging of the story. Oda is communicating an overall message by explaining the fall of two flawed worlds before finally the creation of a true utopic world. The first world was whole, but it was imperfect as evil gods ruled and men were slaves underneath them until man touched the sun, made a wish, and the world changed forever. The second world was the era of dreams. Devil fruits spread across the world, and the ancient kingdom prospered with its endless energy source. But this era was imperfect as well, as only the ancient kingdom prospered. This led to envy and struggle to claim the ancient kingdom's power. In the end, corrupt forces took over and ruled an even more broken world. And finally, the third world is one where all will be set right. The evil forces will be torn down, the world will be brought back to what it once was, but this time without inequality and hoarding of power. This time, the sun and its dream energy will be shared for all. The whole world living together in one piece. This all just naturally makes sense if you simply work backwards from what Oda has already made clear the ideal world is throughout the story. A world that is divided, where races and nations are separate and compete against one another, where resources are hoarded, where land is fought over, where some rule over others. These are all the flaws that Oda has painted throughout the series that must be eliminated. And Oda showed us the ideal vision of what the world should look like at the end of Skypiea, as the Skypiea arc is very blatantly a microcosm for the story of One Piece as a whole. At the end of Skypiea, we are shown that the ideal world is one in which everyone can live together in the same land, sharing the same home, not divided between islands, and sharing the same resource that everyone treasures, in Skypiea that being symbolized by Vert. This can only be achieved by defeating the evil gods that claim to be above others who seek to unjustly rule. Symbolically, we even see a flame symbolizing the sun at the center of this harmonious utopia. So literally just look at Oda's messaging of what the ideal world should be and the answer is clear. The utopia that would make for a true dawn and happy ending would be one where everyone is all together in the same giant land, not separated by boundaries or islands or races or nations. Everyone is together with infinite resources that are shared amongst everyone that allow everyone to always have as much as they need. This is what Vegapunk's dream was, this is what Luffy's dream is, and really that is the true magic of the world of One Piece, the power of dreams that can literally fuel a perfect dream society. The only missing piece is the sun that has disappeared, that we may very well be on a journey to rediscover, as we now know that defeating Imu and the Celestial Dragons is not enough. The dawn cannot be brought to the world until we once again have the sun, and are once again able to tap into this limitless energy of dreams that is all around us. So let me know in the comments of this video how you believe the final war of the Third World will end, and if you enjoyed this video, then definitely like and subscribe. And if you want to hear how the island of Wano also foreshadows this being the truth of the world, how the Lunarians' flames on their backs fit into all this, how this ties back to the prophecy from Fishman Island, and how it completes the story of the All Blue, then make sure to listen to my podcast that just dropped by becoming a member on YouTube or by supporting me on Patreon. Link in the description below.